fields of hydrogen, which are ruled by the spiritual force of the universe, decide to give birth to the divine human, man and woman. It just takes on, and it gives birth to it. It's really, you can almost see it, how it all happened.
Let's talk about the Akashic Records for a second. You touched on them briefly. Dr. Bruce Goldberg has talked about them in the past as well. Who kind of basically keeps this? It's almost like it's in the mind of God, right?
Well, see, that's one of the things I'm looking at here, the possibility that the records of everything that's ever happened in perfect accuracy. The ancient Hindus say that if you were, for example, in the presence of a tree and you go into the super state of samadhi, and there are these 9 levels or 6 levels of samadhi and 3 nirvanas, and you're in this super advanced state of consciousness, you focus on the actual atoms in the tree, and they start to show you pictures of everything that's happened around them. I often, when I think of that, I think of, again, the laser coming through the eye of the DVD player and going through the plastic, the ordinary plastic, and there's pictures, there's movies, right? Well, the ancient yogis say that everything has memory. Trees, of course, are loaded with hydrogen and water. And inside of that hydrogen are real pictures and images. Well, what if this hydrogen, the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy, the sun, the planets, all of the informational systems of water contain the Akashic, the records themselves? That's what I'm thinking is happening. Now, I think there is a possible case. We're coming towards this now. It's not science fiction anymore. That everything not only has structure, like water has structure and memory in a sense, but what if there are actual pictures and memories in the water, just like our heads, our brains, as Kurt Wuthrich says, the Nobel Prize winner, your head is full of water, which is that where the memories are. And that would mean if we could extract that data, and I think this would make a great science fiction movie. Imagine what would happen to the courts and the legal system and our government if you could know the absolute truth about anything.
Tell us a few techniques, if you can, David, for just what people can quickly do at home. And again, the sun sound is probably the most effective, I would assume.
I believe sonically the sound of the sun is the most effective. You can see the picture on your website, and you can go to my website and you can obtain that for next to nothing. And then I think prayer over water is very powerful, especially if it's very sincere. And if we just say a quick blessing and we run off, I really don't think it's going to be very powerful. I think exposing water to your favorite music will give you the vibration of whatever that music is, and whether it's heavy metal or classical,
and that would be instantly,
or
right?
The Moody Blues. It happens instantly. But the argument is, how long can it hold the information? There are certain experiments where the information...
Now, that's a good question.
Yeah.
What are you finding out?
Well, from going through a lot of the data, it seems that the more profound and sincere the information, the longer it holds. But it's not the only factor. There are many other factors. I mean, is there a reason that, for example, you go into the church, into that quietude, and the holy water is in the vessel, and it stays there? And if you took that water out into the city and, you expose it to the noises and the traffic, would it still, have that power? And I think over time it eventually would lose it.
William Reich talked about orgone in the atmosphere, in the universe. Mm-hmm. Might he have been talking about this substance of water that is in the universe?
Well, it's interesting. The argon, I know Trevor James Constable has done a lot of experiments. The idea of the ether and the argon energies, the more subtle substratums to the universe, that if you can alter just a little bit of the information on that subtle plane, the result on the physical plane is sometimes, incredibly obvious, incredibly profound. In fact, Trevor claims that he's able to use these argon energy tubes to cause it to rain, and he's demonstrated this several times. It's really amazing. But a lot of, actually, there's a guy, I just learned about him, I'm reading his books, Gustave Le Bon, who was a sociologist and free-thinking scientist, kind of like I am. He didn't have a PhD in physics or science, but his work predates Einstein, and it seems that he clearly understands E equals mc squared, that energy and mass are equivalent in this relationship. It seems that according to the World Research Foundation, whom educated me about Gustav Le Bon, the ideas of Wilhelm Reich, the Royal Rife technology, which uses frequencies to destroy viruses and diseases, all comes from Gustav Le Bon. And Le Bon's work and his thesis of work really reflects upon this mystery of water once again, because what Le Bon discovers is that if you, for example, if you take a piece of wood, and this was an experiment that was Steve Ross, the director of the World Research Foundation, told me about. If you take a piece of wood and you bombard it with radio waves or frequencies, Tesla frequencies, the Tesla frequencies cause the information in the piece of wood to expand out into the wave, and the wave propagates and shares itself over a great area. He shows this experiment where a scientist who studied Le Bon realized this, that he took two little pieces of wood and put them in a black long tube that were activated by Tesla energy and put them in a very polluted lake. And within a couple of years, the lake completely restored itself. The waters were pristine, the pH level of the water went way up, and there were fish, and everything was thriving again. So when he did this, as a contracted piece of work, the contractors, the people who contracted him, wanted to know, how did you do it? And he said, whatever you do, don't open the black tubes, because that's where the answer is. And of course, they opened the black tubes, and all they found was two little pieces of wood chips. They did it, but they weren't ordinary wood chips. They were wood chips that were exposed to this activation process. So what Le Bon discovered is every element on the periodic table, a ruby, a sapphire, has particular information that's kind of like tightly bound up inside of it. And so Le Bon found if you induced Tesla energy or frequencies upon that, it would cause that information to come out and share itself with its environment. So essentially, the experiments we're doing on water work very similar. There are healing powers in the waters and information that we put in the water.
I think it's remarkable. David, stay with us. We're going to be right back. We're going to take phone calls next with you on Coast to Coast AM. Sure is, and we're going to take your phone calls in just a moment now with David Sereda on Coast to Coast AM. David, before we go to calls, tell us about the Universal Memory System. How does it work?
Well, that's actually my greatest interest. Once you see the scientific evidence that water, hydrogen has memory and consciousness, and you realize that hydrogen is the most abundant element of the universe. It makes up 75% of the visible universe. And now, I don't know if you heard this, but scientists have actually found a big chunk of the missing matter of the universe, and they found it's ultraviolet hydrogen. It's hydrogen vibrating at a higher frequency or higher temperature. So hydrogen is everywhere. It's in our spiral arms in our galaxies, and it's in our stars. And when you really realize that all of these informational systems of water are communicating instantly over the vast distances of space, the idea of us looking for an intelligent signal in the radio spectrum at SETI seems almost like a waste of time, and possibly the reason we haven't yielded any real evidence for extraterrestrial life there is because that's not where the higher intelligences are broadcasting, because light travels too slowly. So I'm really excited about applying this knowledge and helping develop new super sensors using hydrogen or water sensors to see if we can actually get a signal of intelligence. And there have been experiments done very similar to this. There was an experiment in the movie Secret Life of Plants, which was not even officially released, which I actually saw, where scientists pointed a telescope at the star system of Sirius, and they put a Faraday cage around the telescope, and at the end of the telescopic array where we look at the star system of Sirius, they placed living sprouted mustard seeds and connected, which are full of water and living, and they connected sensors to these little sprouted mustard seeds. And when they pointed it at Sirius, they claimed, the researchers